and maybe at the time some of you did think about this as a concept. Wouldn't the imagination be, if we could put ourselves in 1945, the establishment of the United Nations and all that, well, there won't be another war for another 20 or 30 years at least. That is, what would have been perhaps projected at the time. And it, of course, was, immediately there was an Iron Curtain, hostility between East and West, and everything else that went on, progressing there from the world. New countries coming up, and then abuses and new dictatorships and all of that. The communist revolution in China, the split between India and Pakistan and independence, the creation of Israel. But we must remember that in 48 Israel was created as a state. Only in 46 was Jordan created. There all of this was happening right on top of each other, and the world looked like an absolute morass. There are those, however, who still essentially cling to this philosophy, simply stating, however valid or not, that wherever humanity is going, it's not on a straight line that we could possibly measure in a single lifetime or in a single generation. We have to add maybe different concepts to our analysis of how low humanity has sunk in the 20th century. We think of it as a low point because we human beings have done the worst we've ever done in recorded history just in the 20th century. We have to add to this that who knows what would have been done if the technological potential had been there. If the Assyrian and the Roman had gas chambers and mechanization, I can't imagine that they would have been any bit gentler than the Germans were, than the Nazis were. We also have to understand that if such a philosophy and such a regime came to power anywhere else in the world, somewhere in Asia, that similar atrocities could have been committed. And as we're discovering things about true statistics and numbers of the Soviet Union, and for that matter the People's Republic, we are staggered in what we're learning about the tens of millions of people that have been killed. We look and we say, well, Hitler killed 6 million Jews, and the world hates Jews, and somebody was going to get to us and kill us. And there are people who write books and say the origin of Hitler was in Martin Luther and in German culture. And what Hitler did was centuries in coming, and no matter how advanced we thought Germany was and how assimilated the Jew was coming, that this was going to happen to the Jew. Think about Stalin and his own Soviet people. Think about Mao and his own Chinese people, and how we are learning that the numbers of murdered are in the tens of millions of these people. So, what are we going to say for humanity in the 20th century? It's not a great record that we're racking up, by any means. At the same time, we have to look where there are those avenues of progress. We're a global community for the first time. We do have a new, and of course this is restricted only to certain nations, but there is a new language of diplomacy in politics, where there is a new respect for each other. As powerful as the United States looms, we are emerging from this time when Great Britain, the United States, and a number of European imperialist powers had certain relationships with the rest of the world and are gaining a certain amount of equanimity with these other nations, with these other countries. There's cooperation in fields of medicine, in fields of science between nations. And as was supposed to be the focus of the class, there is a new understanding in different schools of theology of each religion for the other. While we had this theocracy under the Hasmoneans, and while Alexander Yanai engaged in forcibly converting non-Jews to Judaism, there really has hardly been a respectable Jewish thinker from any movement or camp who hasn't said that Christianity and Islam are monotheistic religions in some form or other, and are fine for non-Jews to practice, and may very well result in their salvation as a non-issue. When the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the late, nearly anointed, was asked what to do by his mishulachim when they would go out in the mitzvah tanks and ask people, are you Jewish? Did you put on tefillin today? If they said, no, I'm not Jewish, they published a little pamphlet, Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, the 7 Noachite laws for all humanity. And they said, give this to them, chat with them. If they want to talk more, talk more. You're not necessarily supposed to actively proselytize. We have institutions now that are also spanning the movements, believe it or not, that are seeking to actively proselytize non-Jews to Judaism. Jew people that are in relationships with Jews or married to Jews is one of these target areas. And another target area or another philosophical view is just replenishing the numbers of the Jewish people and getting people who have no religion, dissatisfied with their religion, are interested in Judaism, to make them more welcome within Jewish ranks. This is it is an interesting moment that we live in history from a theological standpoint, Jewishly. We first of all have Jews from all the corners of the world being gathered to the land of Israel. We have Jews from various ethnic backgrounds intermingling with each other. We have women asserting a ritual role in Judaism, and we have more converts than ever before in recorded history since Alexander Yanai, and perhaps inclusive of that era as well. All of those are messianic signs. All of those are taught in traditional Jewish Midrashim to be signs that Mashiach is coming or among us already. We are rebuilding Jerusalem. We are reclaiming the land. We refer to this land in the Agnon prayer that we recite for Israel as Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu, the first flowering of our redemption. That is a messianic reference, a clear messianic reference. We also might have a class on messianism, but many of the things that we're seeing are these messianic concepts. Bayom Hahu, we all say the words, you know what they mean? We all know what the words mean. Do we know the implication? Bayom Hahu Yiyeh Adonai Echad Ushemo Echad. On that day God will be one and God's name one. That was, of course, Kaplan's favorite concept in terms of the universalism of Judaism. Yes? Did your hand up? No? Oh, I'm sorry. So the hand over there. Yeah.
The Black Muslim movement, is that now part of Islam, or is that a separate splinter group?
Yes and yes. There are essentially two groups that splintered, and both are trying to achieve recognition in Orthodox Islam. Wallace Muhammad, the son of Elijah Muhammad, became a mainstream Muslim. Malcolm X, of course, is famous for having done a Hajj. He actually went to Mecca, and he learned to pray in Arabic, and he learned to, do the whole thing. The people that we hear the most about is the NOI, the Nation of Islam. That's Louis Farrakhan and the late Khalid Muhammad's organization, and they, according to most statistics, represent only about 10% of those people identifying themselves as Muslims. Nevertheless, we hear the most about them. They are the best organized. He has, I don't know if he did it, but Farrakhan, or whoever made the NOI what it is, has figured out exactly how to get a religion off the ground. And that is, give it a corporate economic base. That is how Islam got off the ground in the first place. We're going to go conquering and share the profits. Who's not going to come on that ride? Who of those hardy nomads that left the Arabian Peninsula is not going for that ride? And you know what? Suppose you don't make a profit. I'm going out there to risk death. But if you die, it's even better than if you get the profit here. Is the world to come that's painted for you. And everything that I'm forbidding, Muhammad teaches them and his successors teach them, and the things that he was forbidding them were an attempt. The Mongols did the same thing. Genghis Khan did the same thing. It was an attempt to get some measure of military discipline into a unit of nomads. So no hashish, and no alcohol, and no homosexuality, and no all the things that he was teaching them, to do. All of these prohibitions, if you like any of those things, they're yours when you go to heaven. And you have little boys if you like those, and you get 70 virgins if you want those, and And this theology has people strapping explosives to themselves, even as we speak now, and training to do that, and preparing to do that. This same concept. So the Nation of Islam in this country was formed on exactly that same corporate economic base. Be part of this, and you can become a security guard. You can work your way up in this thing. So they have this security company. What do you do with them? What did he have as a resource? Humanity. He had humans. He had big, tough guys with no training and no education. I'll make a security organization. And he did, and they hire out as security people, and they get government contracts for this, and all this stuff, and the money that's generated is incredible. And as well as Khalid Muhammad or Louis Farrakhan or these other guys seem to live in their condominiums and all-white buildings, they share the wealth, or at least they share the employment. they get their people working, and they instill a certain discipline into their ranks that